Hello everyone, Watchthisreview here with my top 10 figures for 2011. Actually, I should do a top 11, but whatever. At any rate, this is not to be confused with 2012, despite doing it at a time when logically I should be doing a 2012 list, but I procrastinated like hell, and I have to get this done now before moving on to that. Now, if it sounds like I'm shouting, it's because I am. I've got a really loud computer at this point. I think there's something wrong with it, so I want to make sure that you'll be able to hear my voice over that sort of loud blowing noise in the background, which is annoying as hell. At any rate, these always sort of reflect my personal opinions. There are some figures I didn't pick up, which obviously won't make it on the list, and in other cases, nah, 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 nah. There's always some level of personal bias just in terms of characters and so forth. But yeah, that's enough disclaimers. I probably have a whole bunch more, but I don't feel like saying anymore. Let's start off with some honorary mentions who aren't going to make it in the list. First off, DC Universe Classics had well, actually, Mattel's DC lines had a pretty tremendous year. They had a lot of cool stuff coming out. Unfortunately, I can't include all of it, and in good conscience, I won't even include much of it, because in some cases, like with Hal here, it's not like they're really giving us new sculpts. It's just that they're doing these sculpts with better paint and nicer head sculpts. This is just one really good example of how the line's kind of sort of improved in terms of quality we're getting despite not getting anything terribly more in addition. Also really loved the Riddler for that year. Was tempted to put him in the top. Unofficial number 11, though, would probably be the Sinestro Corps Scarecrow, who sort of breaks from their established look. I mean, he clearly has a lot of new parts going on here. He has ball-socketed wrists and stuff, double pins at the elbows and knees, and in general, it's a little bit different. Of course, I could bring out a dozen other DC Universe Classics figures to show you, but I'm just going to skip on to the real list at this point. And at number 10, we have Robin. This is one of the variants from the Bane wave. Very spectacular looking Robin. Features a lot of newish parts. A lot of color, which is kind of suited. Now, there probably will be some polarized opinion on the outfit because, yeah, it's a little controversial in terms that these are the sort of outfits that gave that sort of homoerotic, I guess, stigma to the characters of Batman and Robin. I mean, who has a teen dress up like this? Well, a teen boy at any rate. Of course, given that Batman supposedly the father, I don't think he'd have a teen girl dressing like this either, but this Robin features double pins here at the elbows and knees, as well as a sort of, I guess, ball socket here at the ankle, giving us backboard all around. Now, while it's a lot of articulation for a DC Universe Classics figure, I hesitate to put him higher because this is sort of standard for other lines, so where they kind of were improving a lot towards the end of the main line, or at least in some cases, it's really not a huge leap forward, but great sculpting, awesome looking figure. I mean, he even has didn't point out the fact that he's both socketed wrists. But yeah, great articulation, great look, etc., etc. On to number 9. And at number 9 we have Bruce Almighty. Sorry, that should be Blues Almighty, but Ame Ame and some other retailers might have just been Ame Ame. Listed the character as Bruce instead of Blues. This, of course, is the Kotobukiya Proto-Man. He's a plastic model kit, and that's part of the reason why I wouldn't rank him higher, because these things have a sort of annoying tendency for the parts to come off at times. And they pop right back in, mind you, and granted, he's got a ton of articulation, he has a bunch of interchangeable parts, but, these plastic model kits always kind of feel a little cheap to me, so I have a hard time ranking them higher on a figure list. It's technically, well, I mean, they are and they aren't figures, but, you know, tremendous articulation, lots of interchangeable parts. And of course, he's a character I just love. Now, unfortunately, Kotobukiya's Plamo kit line kind of got canceled, probably because Bandai is doing just normal figures for a lot of the Mega Man characters, and hopefully we will eventually see Proto Man and others in that. But so let's move on. At number 8, we have Lenny from NECA's Mogwai series. I was really impressed by the sort of general quality and stuff that NECA has given to their new Mogwai series, and while both he and George are really nice figures, you know, you can really see the eye roller feature with Lenny here, more so than George, and while there's some contention here, and granted the eye rollers work better on some figures than others, it is a very cool touch, so I do kind of like this. Otherwise, you will notice that their sculpts are very similar. They basically recycled everything other than giving him a new upper piece here to bulk out the height a little bit, and a new head sculpt and ears. But very nice figure. And let's jump on. At number 7, we have the Marvel Universe Doctor Strange. Now, Hasbro's 3 3/4-inch line has been drastically improving for at least some of the figures. I mean, they do keep giving us older molds in other cases, and if you remember, quite a few of last year's entries were from their 3 3/4-inch line, partly because they weren't doing 6 inches at the time. But Doctor Strange here is one of the earliest Hasbro 3 3/4-inch figures to use the ankle pivots or ankle rockers. But besides that, he also features ball-socketed wrists, which is awesome for a character who kind of has those mystical poses. Just a very all-around, nicely articulated figure with great paint and, you know, very distinct look, who, you know, will display greatly on any shelf, or most shelves. I don't know. Let's jump on. At number 6, we have Bandai's 8-inch Thundercats Classics Lino. Now, I grew up on Thundercats, I love the series, but unfortunately I had a ton of time to wait before somebody produced really decent modern figures for the line, or hell, any figures at all. But Bandai mostly knocked it out of the park with their Thundercats Classics line, but unfortunately that really didn't last very long. We got 2 figures in the 8-inch scale, which again, kind of weird scale, just Lion-O and Tigra. Then they gave us 2 smaller ones, another Lion-O and a Mumra for their 6-inch line. And then they canceled everything, so that totally sucks, but at least we have this really awesome Lion-O, who features a really good amount of articulation. The only sort of downside to this figure is some of them kind of have a wobbly neck, so yeah. Otherwise, great articulation, including things like ankle pivot, and, you know, just a really good all-around figure that should please fans of the franchise as it has me. But moving on. At number 5, we have the Dark of the Moon Thundercracker. This is sort of a shared entry in that I also really love the Generations Thundercracker, but, you know, that was just another repaint of the Seeker mold, whereas this is an entirely new mold, only shared with Starscream in the West, and also with Skywarp for the Takara version, which unfortunately never made it out here. While Thundercracker might not be alone in using this mold, clearly he rocks the look best with those shiny metallic blues and reds. The mold itself is a lot cooler than the previous Seeker molds, which I always thought looked, I don't know, kind of funky, but, you know, this is actually pretty darn cool. Beyond that, he has a ton of upper body articulation. You've got joint after joint after joint after joint, as well as a decent amount of customizable sort of display options at the bottom, because you can sort of adjust his height drastically. Pop the legs up front, pop them sideways. Very nice figure, lots of options. What more can I say? Nothing, because I'm moving on to number 4. And at number 4, we have the DC Universe Classics Collect and Connect Bane. I was never a Bane fan. Well, I mean, more recently I sort of have been liking the character, but, you know, it's very hard not to like this figure. Mattel really did something pretty cool here. He's got a ton of articulation. Whereas, like Darkseid, he also has the movement at the boots. And even ankle rockers to a certain extent. Very glorious looking figure. Maybe he should have been up a little bit higher in the list rather than this close to the top, but you know, I feel kind of justified here because he does look great and he can do a lot of stuff. Plus Bane. At number 3 we have Parallax, the Collect and Connect from the Green Lantern Movie Masters line. Parallax is a bit of an odd entry because in this case the parts are greater than the sum, in that the sort of way that you're supposed to design him looks pretty awful, but given that almost every part is interchangeable, you can do a lot of really cool things with him. In fact, you could probably even just keep popping on lower torsos at the bottom of the figure and then, you know, just have a giant, super long figure if you so desired. He'd also look weird as hell. The fact that you have the alternate head here sort of adds a little bit of value there, because, you know, the other head I don't think looks as nice, but, you know, Parallax definitely is one of the more interesting figures of the year, even if he isn't necessarily the best as the way that he was intended. Alright, so if you've been watching the video so far and really remember 2011, there are 2 figures that I assume you're probably really expecting to see. Rather than announce the one and you'll automatically figure out who the winner for the best figure of 2011 is, I'm going to bring both finalists out at once and make the case for each of them before announcing which one it is and then clarifying why I picked that one. So without further ado, the 2 figures are the Marvel Select Juggernaut and the Marvel Universe Masterworks Sentinel. This very massive dude. Now the Marvel Universe Masterworks Sentinel, this is the variant of it, which I think is honestly the much better way to go. Comes in 2 colors. The standard version that went to retail is a silver, I think it was silver purple, kind of funky looking, as opposed to this one, which is purple and a lighter shade of purple, or blue and purple, I don't know. I picked this one up as a San Diego Comic-Con exclusive. He later went out as a variant, but of course by then the standard version had sold so poorly that supposedly a lot of places this one ended up at clearance. He also ended up at a lot of the overstock retailers, so I picked up a few additional copies there. A very nice figure. He's solid. I think it was something like 16 inches tall. He has a sound feature, which I don't really use, and a very good amount of articulation. Definitely a solid stand-in for the Marvel Legends Sentinel, which, as you'll recall, I've frequently mentioned as being one of the greatest action figures of all time. Not quite there, obviously, in this case, but, you know, definitely a solid contender. Now, we've seen quite a few Juggernauts over the years, so the big thing that they've either lacked in articulation or they've just lacked in bulk. Now, while I think that the Marvel Legends one did a lot of things really nicely, he was tall, but he just wasn't very broad. And when I think Juggernaut, I think, you know, just absolutely hulking titan. And the Marvel Select version can phase that one to a T. The only drawback on this is the paint app can be a little bit dicey. In particular, the bands might not be fully painted over, so it has more of a bronze look as opposed to a red or, you know, some other metal, which kind of sucks. Otherwise, awesome looking sculpt, very good paint job, a brand new sculpting and everything, very cool. There is a variant for this figure, which is just him unmasked. They really should have just done an unmasked alternate head, but hey, whatever. So, either two of these figures, or sorry, either one of these figures, you can understand why I would place it as the top figure of 2011. But which is it going to be? Well, it's a tough one. Even while I'm standing here, I'm still half rethinking this. But you know what? Marvel Select Juggernaut. He's the number one. Marvel Select just really hit it out of the park on this one. Or Diamond Select Toys, as it were. It's an incredible sculpt. It's just all brand new parts. Very solid paint for the most part. Sure, the articulation is somewhat limited in places, but in terms of value for money, you don't get much better than this. Came out for around 20 bucks, and he's 2.5 pounds or so. So, that's some definite value right there. I mean, some of the previous Marvel Selects, they were kind of hollow. This one, you can really feel the weight, and there's something really cool about that. Granted, I still think that the Marvel Universe Sentinel is completely awesome. Even has that sound feature, which again I don't really use, but this is just mostly a rehash, remold of the Marvel Universe Galactus, so I give him a little bit, or some fewer points for that. Granted, still, very great figure, and one that, I like so much that I've picked up several of, although partly because I also really like the Sentinel. And I guess half that too is where there is probably some element of bias with this, because these are two of my favorite sort of comic book characters, or among the top favorites for my whatever. But yeah, those were my picks for 2011. I guess later on you'll see my 2012 list. Probably won't take this long, but until next time, folks.